What's going on, everyone? This is Eric Stewart from the Fishing Fanatics podcast, and today I'm joined with Austin Neary, who's the founder of Dream Catchers Fishing Brand and also the owner of Fish Tips. So, how you doing, Austin?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hanging out. Been in the office all day trying to wrangle up my guides, book trips, get stuff posted online, connect with sellers on the platform, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely a big undertaking on Fish Tips, and we'll hit into Fish Tips more about that, and then your guiding service too, a little bit about that more. But I just want to start in a place where way back in the day when you first got into fishing. What does that kind of story look like of how you first got hooked into fishing?
Yeah, man. So we lived on Lake Wiley. My dad had built a house when I was a little boy, maybe like south of Charlotte, Lake Wiley, South Carolina, Little Allison Creek. And man, I just remember going down to the dock and catching brim and everything. And I always loved sports. And my mom and dad were both Division I athletes at Clemson University, so they got me involved in sports at a super young age. And then my dad was a custom home builder, moved to Maryland. I was still playing baseball like crazy, and then I liked this competitiveness, and I was like, man, I love fishing. And Dad had actually started a junior Bassmaster Club, which, if you're from Philly, do you know the Duarte brothers that run house on the Upper Bay? And
Oh,
there's some hammers that were in our junior fishing club. And anyways, that's how I got started fishing, man. I was in Maryland, uh, Potomac River, Upper Bay. I mean, the whole deal in Maryland, and then yeah, just fell in love with the competitive side of bass fishing, and it was just awesome. It's all like literally as a kid, I played baseball and I fished. I fished golf course ponds, the whole wacky rig deal, learning how to use baits and what fish eat and everything. So that's how it all started for sure.
absolutely. And then you went on to college. And did you play baseball in college, or did you just fish in college?
Yeah, no. So I was a pretty high profile athlete coming out of high school. I was the 2011 Maryland Gatorade Player of the Year, which is given to the best baseball player, in high school in the
Oh yeah.
state. Uh, there's a bunch of articles. I'm that guy that would be like, I used to be good, but no, dude, there's a bunch of articles. I was a pretty good ball player, but I ended up I had planned to play professionally. I was planned to be drafted out of high school and play. I actually got hurt at the end of my senior year playing summer ball. I tore my right labrum in my shoulder the first time. I said I want to heal up and go to college. And my baseball coach had said, "Hey, go to a place you're going to love in case you get hurt." And I had been to Florida State, Georgia Tech, just tons of ACC schools. Maryland was recruiting me. But dude, I ended up at Western Carolina University. It's a mid-major in the Southern Conference, and it is the most beautiful campus on earth. I think it is like surrounded by 4,000 and 5,000 foot mountains, rivers running right through campus with trout in them and bass. And I was like, man, I want to be here because I want to be able to play baseball and fish and randomly show up to class. But no, I ended up there, dude. I played baseball. I redshirted my freshman year recovering from my shoulder injury, and then my sophomore year, about a quarter of the way through the season, I hit a double in the gap against Wake Forest, slid into second base, and I tore my shoulder again for the second time. And crazy, dude. But I fell into honestly like suicidal depression, and my life was in shambles. And my buddy was like, "Dude, you have this passion for fishing." He's like, maybe God wants to use you in the fishing industry." And I was like, I never thought about it. But the more I thought about like what does my life look like without baseball, I'm like, I love to fish, and that is like something that has been on my heart since I was little. Like I love the fishing industry, and I started my guide business. We have a ton of lakes. We have about 20 lakes that are between 500 and 10,000 acres in Western North Carolina. We guide on all of them, but I brought my bass boat down from Maryland and put out some brochures and said, "Hey, I'm a lake fishing guide." And one thing led to another. In the first year, I ended up booking 200 guide trips. Yes, and I'm like, holy cow! I think I actually like am onto something, and I didn't know anything about my costs, variable costs, insurances,
Right.
taxes, all these things. And so I just started breaking down spreadsheets. I'm like, all right, if I do this many trips and I go up to my prices like this, I think I can make a decent living. And one thing led to another. And my guide business really exploded. And then, that turned into a tackle shop. And then the tackle shops then morphed into a boat service and mechanic shop too, to mix with the tackle shop and the guide business. So pretty much
Yeah.
where I am today.
No, absolutely. And I was also played college baseball and I was also injured. That point of like it's a weird feeling when like because when you're growing up like baseball or if you play any sport, really, it's kind of your life and everything's kind of wrapped around it in high school and just like the whole goal is to get to the next level and get to the next level. But then when you get hurt, you're kind of caught, for lack of a better term, with your pants down
Yeah.
and you're like kind of looking around like, what do I do here? And it's cool to hear you turn to fishing. When you started booking those guides, were you still in college?
Yeah, yeah. I was actually I've always been enamored with business. My
Yeah.
dad, when I was a little boy, he always worked for somebody. He said, Austin, if you work really hard, do it for yourself, man. Own your own business and work hard. So I actually was in school majoring in entrepreneurship. And business, just everything business related. I double majored with entrepreneurship and a degree in marketing. And I just knew those would be valuable for any kind of professional career, whatever it was. So I started booking trips in college. I was a junior in college, and I used my business. I started Dreamcatcher Guides LLC, which is an umbrella company for all my businesses now. But Dreamcatcher Guides LLC, uh, I used it as my internship for my marketing internship,
I
my
like it.
business.
Yeah.
So like all it was kind of cool. I got to literally use my business to propel me through college, and it was one of those deals. I'm like, I'm not necessarily a proponent of higher education in 2023. I don't necessarily see the value, but I said, if I'm going to stay in college, I'm at least going to use my degree like now. So I started a business, and I can remember not showing up for classes, and the professors would be like, hey, you got to show up for class. And I'm like, I'm the only one in the class that owns a business and is trying to run it, so that, man, it was fun. But yeah, I ended up graduating on time and then just rolled right into my professional career as a business owner and fishing guide.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so it's the truth, right? With college, it's tough to go to class and then also run a business. And I've kind of seen it on my own things with doing some side things there too. And I know you mentioned you're not like a huge component of like the schooling thing, and I totally get that, dude. I totally get that. It's kind of a racket just to kind of get the money in the door, but
Yeah.
we'll leave that for another podcast. We'll kind of focus on fishing here, talk about your guide service a little bit more, and it's Dreamcatcher's fishing brand or fishing guide. You got the website there too. You got the e-commerce store where I see you're selling a lot of swim baits and different stuff like that on there. You got the guide service. Do you have anything else kind of underneath that umbrella too?
Yeah. So, it's kind of unique. When I started guiding, I just kind of looked at it. I'm like, all right, what's the next kind of biggest cost that is I have that like I can try to control? So it was the tackle. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to start a tackle shop. There's no good tackle, business. And yeah, I was throwing a lot of big swim baits. So where I'm from is where the movie, The Southern Trout Eaters DVD was filmed. North Georgia, upstate South Carolina, Western North Carolina. So all these guys were throwing big swim baits. They made this movie, Matt Peters, Jeremy Pratt, Brad Rutherford, they all left. They just took off and they just left this huge niche market. And anyway, so I was like, I want to retail all this tackle. Like I want to be able to retail these swim baits and everything. So that's when I opened up my tackle business. And and then, thankfully just some doors have opened. My wife and I, we own a few Airbnbs, so we'll get people, they come and stay in their Airbnbs. They go out on trips with us. We're working on a TV show. The guys out of North Georgia, they're going to come in, stay at an Airbnb, we're going to go film the TV show and everything. But it all plays, all my stuff is very like synergy. They all work together, right? Like I've always been one of these guys. I don't want to own a business over here and then own a separate business that has nothing to do with it over there. Like I believe there's like strength and synergy. So it was like, all right, guide business, tackle shop, boat service, Airbnb, and like just really create this little orb of energy of multiple revenue streams. That's kind of what I tried to develop when I think of my business. So
Absolutely. It's really good mindset for any entrepreneur too. And the main thing I want to hit on here is big swim baits because I'm part of like the swim bait underground and kind of that entire culture for like the reselling and you got the Hinkles, and I saw the clutches and the TKs on your website too.
Yeah.
So I know you hit it on a little bit with trout eaters, but tell me a little bit more of like how you fell in love with big swim baits and throwing them.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I watched that Southern Trout Eater DVD and I'm like, oh my gosh, like all of these lakes are within like 30 minutes of me. And so I got my first swim bait ever was a Huddleston. And then I
Um,
bought a triple trout. And then so I had just finished playing ball. I got hurt. And then it was like middle of May and I'm at a lake and I pick up an 8-inch triple trout. My buddy and I were fishing a benefit tournament, like 70 boats. And I'm like, how much does it usually take to win out here? And he's like, your real country boy, Kendrick says, son, it takes about 21 pounds. And I was like, all right, well, dude, we just need, 2 5-pound bites. And he looked at me and he said, you know how hard it is to catch a 5-pounder on this lake? And I picked up the triple trout late. This is like not late May. It's almost around my birthday. It was like May 10th or May 11th. So I pick a triple trout up and I cast it across this point and I'm reeling it and one hits it. And I'm like, dude, I got one on a triple trout. My like second ever cast with a triple trout. I'm like, dude, it feels big. It dives under the boat. I go to like lift it to get it in the net. The thing has a mouth like the size of my hat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he nets it, dude. It was a 9.5-pounder.
Jesus.
My first ever big swim bait fish was a 9.5-pound largemouth. Now come to find out, like I was kind of raw and new to the whole deal, but it was a herring spawn, and this was like a rocky point. It had a little shoal that came off of it. Like it makes perfect sense now, but I had no idea what I was doing at the time. So I ended up catching this 9.5-pounder. We go to the next point. I catch like a 4.5-pound smallmouth. We end up winning. I have big fish of the tournament, and I'm like, holy cow, this swim bait thing's real. And then I got into throwing rats. It was just one of these things. Like every time I picked up a new swim bait, dude, I would catch a giant fish. It was like I picked up an S waiver. My first fish on an S waiver was an almost 9-pounder. It was like 8 3/4. I pick up a rat. My first fish on a rat's a 7-pounder. My first fish on a triple trout's a 9. And they were happening quick, like within like the first 30 casts. And I'm like, man, this is something really unique. And I'll tell you, this is no joke. When I caught that 9.5-pounder, I was at the weigh-in. Someone was like, hey, how'd you catch that fish? And I've always been an abundance mentality guy. Like, I'll tell you how I do things and everything. But I said, I caught it on this big swim bait. And the guy looked at me and he said, you're a cheater. He said, you're lying. You're a cheater. Ain't never seen a fish come out of this lake like that. And I was like, and so my buddy Kendrick was like, he ain't a cheater. I netted the fish. We caught that. And anyways, I was like, well, I need to start making YouTube videos. So literally I ended up getting a GoPro and I started making YouTube videos because I was catching a lot of these big fish on big swim baits and nobody was like believing it. So that's how the Dream Catchers Fishing YouTube channel was really born, was a guy, people like confronting me that I was cheating, throwing big swim baits. And I'm like, no, man. So that's, it added as like marketing for me. And then the guide business took off and then we started to carry them in our store. And it was like this little snowball. It just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger into what it is today. And we have a great following. We've got, I don't know, like 10,000 or so followers on our Instagram and about 10,000 subscribers on our YouTube. And it's just what it's all about, man. I really enjoy sharing my passion for fishing.
Yeah, I was checking out your YouTube channel before we jumped on this podcast, and there's some awesome stuff over there. So anyone listening, feel free to go over and check that out. The link will be in the description for sure. But I gotta ask you, Austin. So we interview a lot of professional fishermen on this podcast, and a lot of guides too, kind of. But I want to ask you: is there any reason why you focused more on the guide and you didn't really take a run at like the professional fishing side?
Yes, this is a great question. And I have learned in my short time of owning a national and international business, I'm not going to name drop, but I spoke to a gentleman yesterday who fishes at a very high level, and he was emotionally distraught. And he said, dude, I think I'm just kind of done with it. He said, I just can't do it. The finances don't make sense. And I told him, we talked through some stuff, and I said, I agree with you. I have been fortunate enough. I know quite a few Elite Series guys, really good friends, Bass Pro Tour, MLF, the whole, I got BASS. I know a ton of guys, Opens, Elite Series, Bass Pro Tour. Dude, I it's really tough to make it in the tournament scene. And it's this glamour. There's a lot of showy around it, a lot of content around it. Dude, it is an absolute grind. I fished the Bassmaster Opens one year, and I did pretty decent. I mean, I think I finished like 40th in points. It wasn't like great, but I had a couple middle of the pack finishes, and I had a really good finish at Lake Chickamauga. And I was away from my family for multiple weeks. Even when I would cash a check, it just really helped me break even on the week. It financially did not make any sense. I even had sponsors. I had sponsors to pay for it all, which is really cool. So, I mean, I got to do it for free, kind of, because I had really good sponsors. I raised the capital. I was a marketing person for these people and brand ambassador for these people. It wasn't one of these, like, I like the guys that are like, I'm sponsored and they get 25% discount. I'm like, no, you're a discounter. You're not a sponsor, but I raised about $25,000. And at the end of the whole thing, I think I walked away at break even. So it was like, okay, if I want to fish for a living, and Eric, I'm going to tell you this, there's very few people that love freedom as much as your boy does. I love freedom. So when I think about freedom, I think about financial freedom. I think about spiritual freedom. I think about time freedom. And for me, I've always wanted to be in control of my life. And I was like, I love my family. I love just the comfort of my small town. Like, it might sound weird, but being on the road and traveling, like, I enjoy it. But with the pressures, with the financial pressures, dude, it will weigh on a man's heart. And for me, I'm like, okay, I can either stay home and guide 5 days a week, and I guide from 6 a.m. to 11 or noon, right? And I make $500 or $600 a day, not even including a tip. So call it maybe $600 or $700 a day, 5 days a week for 250 trips a year. Be in my tackle shop. I get to have friends over for dinner. Like, literally, my wife has a couple of her girlfriends over with the kids right now. They're playing in the pool outside. Like, to me, that sounds like living life abundantly. That sounds like the abundant life. And anyways, I was like, I never want to be on the road and away from my family and worrying about having to cash checks, man. So for me, it was like, if I can be faithful with my guide business, and, my guide business does about $250,000 a year. We do about 500 trips a year at $500 a pop. And then we have a tackle shop that does, $600,000 a year. And then we do boat maintenance and stuff for another $250 to $300. And I get time freedom. I get to hang out with my little boy. I get to travel with my wife on my terms where I want to go. And so it just never really made financial sense, the tournament deal. I think I don't really know. It's like, I don't know. Jesus said whitewashed tombstones. It looks real pretty, but it's a dead end. And I don't mean that negatively. Some guys are great, man. There's guys that were definitely made for it, but I'll tell you the 100% honest. Well, it's not like I'm not telling you the truth already, but like, the honest truth is, professional bass fishing is a great way to be divorced and bankrupt. Mm. That's the reality. And I'm just, I think a lot of people, I know you've obviously seen, I've kind of been controversial here lately, or, some people think I'm controversial. And I would ask you, I mean, would you agree with that assessment?
It's definitely tough. It's because I've talked to a lot of the elite guys and the open guys, and it's not as glamorous as walking across a Bassmaster Classic stage and holding the fish, right? And that's really what I like to focus on in this podcast. They're like the real stories of like the hard times that people have, and even the good times that people have, right? Because there are really good times in professional bass fishing too. But I think that it is definitely something that's for people that have a lot of freedom, which is why you see a lot of the younger kids getting into it, that are fresh out of college, that do tournaments there and kind of just streamline into that. They don't really have that financial commitment or family commitment that they kind of have to go through.
Yeah. Sure. And listen, there's some people that their parents or family members have great businesses, and they can actually like pay like, hey, go fish $100,000 a year, burn it in a fire, marketing dollars, it's tax write off. I just didn't come up like that, man. I mean, my wife and I, when I started my business, or like when I graduated college and I was in the grind of really like full-time pursuing dream catchers, I had $14 to my name. $14 in a bass boat. And I just like, once again, so this guy who I was talking to yesterday, I said, dude, here's the recipe. If you want to fish for a living, and I'm talking about fishing for a living, right? If you want to fish for a living, guiding on a home lake cuts down your travel expenses, cuts down your fuel expenses, all these things. You're in your own house, right? So cuts down your expenses, guiding on your home lake. You get to guide more because you're really niche focused on your deal. You can become really efficient. And then over time, you become a brand name guide. And you build this brand on this lake. Well, here's the deal. You start doing that, naturally business opportunities will open up. And that's where like tackle shop ended up opening up for me and all these other things. But like you said, there's this like real glamour guy, you see the guy on the classic hitting the water bottles together and it's so awesome. But dude, a lot of these guys that are trying to do this, I mean, I spoke to one guy, really good friend of mine, who took out an unsecured loan of, I think it was $50,000 to pay his entry fees in the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Man,
dude, he did pretty well. He was able to pay those off. But can you imagine fishing with the pressure of that? How about this, dude? Like, think about your peace of mind when you're sleeping at night. I don't know if I don't necessarily battle with anxiety like I used to, but that brings me anxiety. And I'm somebody that likes debt. Like, I enjoy debt in the form of assets, like houses
right.
that I can make money. They're taking an unsecured loan out to pay entry fees to then try to make it in the fit. Dude, that makes, as a businessman, dude, that makes zero financial sense. And then on top of that, now you start talking about adding children into the mix and a family. And man, that sounds like a really hard life of stress and chaos. To me, that doesn't sound like.
No, it's definitely a stressful situation with professional fishermen. But I appreciate you giving me the insight on that, because I was always kind of interested when I looked into your background and that, and kind of the two different avenues that I see most of the time, just guiding, professional fishing. So that's awesome to hear your insight there for
Yeah.
sure.
So let me ask you, do you think guides are professional fishermen?
I think that local guides. It's a great question. I have met. We have a local guide out here, and I would consider him a professional fisherman. I think really anyone that is getting paid to fish is a professional fisherman. I keep it simple. I know there's a lot of like hot takes on like, you know, people don't like being called professional fishermen, but the way I see it in my personal view is if you're out there on the water, and whether you're catching the fish or you're showing people how to catch fish, you're a professional guide, and if you're getting paid, so that's the way I
There,
see it.
there's a lot of ego in fishermen. Can't you? There's pro fishermen, but you can't call some people pro fishermen because
I know.
there's a lot of ego and negativity involved.
I know, man. I've been in that conversation before. Don't call me pro fisherman. All right. Sorry.
Business owners and marketing professionals in the Philly area, Bad Rhino takes the overwhelm out of digital marketing. With tailored digital marketing services, from social media management to SEO and PPC advertising, our expert team navigates the complexities of the digital ad space for your business. Let Bad Rhino lead you to success. Visit badrhinoinc.com and let's take your business to new heights. Bad Rhino, we do digital marketing so you don't have to.
But let's talk about fish tips, because I think it's super interesting the way you kind of built that. But let's just start off on telling us a little bit more about fish tips and what it's all about.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time guide, right? I own a guide business. I have 3 guides that I salary. They're full-time employees for my business. And we guide on a bunch of lakes. We guide on Jocassee, Kiwi, Hartwell, the top end of Neary, Lake Two, Hiwassee, Lake James. Like we've done trips on Norman. So you look at North Georgia, upstate South Carolina, Western North Carolina, dude, we encompass a lot of lakes. Well, naturally, what would happen was we had this booming guide business. We're just booked to the max. I can't even fulfill all the guide requests. And I'd constantly have people messaging me, "Hey man, I'm coming into town. What are they biting on?" And I'm like, "Hey, do you want a guide trip?" And someone would say, yeah, and I'd be able to book them, or so I'd be like, hey, dude, I'm booked up. I can't do a guide trip. But I'd be like, do you want a guide trip? And someone would say, oh, no, I just want your information. And it just put me in this really like awkward situation, man. Of like, hey, like this is how I provide for my family. I've been guiding for a long time. I have so many expenses and fuel and my time and bald tires on my trailer. And golly, dude, I mean, there's so many expenses. I'm like, dude, I spent 10 years to dial in how to catch these fish. I can't just tell you how to go catch them for free. I just can't. I owe it to my family. It's all the time I've spent away from my family to figure out these fish. And now my knowledge has to come back and provide for us. Well, people are like, oh man, no, I understand that. No, I'll pay you something. So I started creating tips. I would like drop a pin on Google Earth and say, hey, you can kind of see it. There's a high spot there on Google Earth. You can see the shoal, or, approach it from this direction with the wind, throw this bait, or, I just started selling these tips to guys, and I'd take their credit card and, I'd run it through the shop, and I'd make a tip for them. Well, all of a sudden I was doing this at like a pretty high pace. And then one day I guided a fella. We smashed a big bag of smallmouth on Lake Glenville, which is my home lake. And he goes, dude, I want to book you tomorrow. I said, Adam, I'm booked for like 3 months. And he goes, oh man. He goes, I said, but you have your own boat, right? Because he had said earlier in the trip, yeah, I got an 18-foot nitro. I said, well, if you have your own boat, I said, what I do is I sell tips exactly like how I would guide you. I write it out. I can make a video for you. And I'll drop some pins, exactly what I'll do. I'll look at the weather tonight for tomorrow, and I'll tell you exactly how I guide you. And this lake's big enough. I've got so much stuff I'm fishing. You can go run this stuff, and I'll take my customers and go run other stuff. They'll have a good day. You'll have a good day. He buys the tip for $200. He goes out, because my guide trips are $600, right? So I imagine $200 is my labor fee, $200 is my expense fee. So that leaves my knowledge at about $200. So anyways, he goes out with his son and they smash him. And he goes, dude, that was awesome. He goes, I hit up so many guides that I've guided with in the past for information. They all blow me off. He goes, what if we created a platform for guides to be able to monetize their intellectual property? And I was like, dude, I've thought about it because obviously I'm doing it, but I've never really thought about scaling it. I think what happens in the fishing industry, and this goes back to even what we were talking about earlier, we're all so starving for success. We never really can look at like a big business. Like I'm so worried about getting my little peanuts. I don't realize that I'm on the peanut farm. You know what I'm saying? Like, like I'm so worried about gathering this one apple that fell off the tree. I don't realize there's an apple tree above me. And like the whole industry starving for success, but like everybody could actually there's plenty to go around. So anyways, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So he comes out of a tech background and I come out of just a country boy guide and fishing guide background. And I know a lot of guides in the industry, and we pioneered this platform called fishtips.com for guides and highly dialed in anglers to be able to make money selling fishing tips. I get hit up. I mean, literally this morning, I had a guy message me. He said, hey, I'm coming up to Lake Hartwell. Saw you were there Saturday. How'd you do? What'd you catch? This is every day as a fishing guide. I get these questions, and obviously we create content around it and everything. But I'm like, holy cow, dude, it's so hard to make it in this industry. You have to have multiple sources of revenue. And here I am, like, I don't say this pridefully or cocky or arrogantly. Like, I've made it in the fishing industry. I've got a business that does $1 million some a year. I have guys that work for me. I can go fish whenever I want to. I can choose to guide. I can choose, like, I'm pretty financially free because of fishing. And, it's like, I know what it takes though to get there. And it takes multiple sources of revenue. Hence why I have so many multiple sources of revenue within my business. But for a fishing guide, the only way a guide can make money is how?
Yeah, taking people out. Yeah.
Taking people out. You're limited. Listen. You're limited purely to your time. It's the lowest form of payment is being compensated for your time. It's called an hourly wage, right? That's why people desire salaries, because they desire to work really hard and maybe less time and make more than what their time is, right? So as a guide, you're income is directly oriented to your time, you're just stuck. You can only earn as much as you're on the water. So how in the world can a guide make passive income? Well, now fishtips.com allows guides to be able to monetize their knowledge. So not only can they guide, of course, I love guiding. I like my guys guiding. They've got families and everything. Like I need guide trips for our business to be successful. But if we're already booked up, or maybe, we're on a bite at a specific place and someone's coming to a different lake and we were on or whatever, we have no problem creating another revenue source for us by monetizing our information and selling fishing tips to those guys. So.
No, I think that's super fair. And I really like the idea. I know you've got a lot of flack on social media about it and all that.
Why do you think we've got so much flack?
I think it's cool to see your content and the way you go about it. So marketing background, I work for a digital marketing agency, just watching you. And like we've kind of mentioned and talked about, I have a couple different social media platforms that I personally run that are made to stir the pot, if you will. And social media in whole, when you leave a negative comment or you leave a positive comment, they don't see it as a negative or a positive. They just see it as a comment. So of course that boosts it and more people share it. And then other people feel like they want to make videos about it. So I actually think what you're doing is really smart. I really do. And I really can appreciate you making videos, kind of adding fuel to the fire and what you do on TikTok for sure.
Yeah. Well, and my desire was never to really be controversial about this. I think there's some things like when I say tournament professional fishing isn't glamorous, there's people, man, we can go somewhere, bro. When people idolize something, they demonize the opposite thing. So what happens is if they idolize professional fishing and that's their desire, and then someone talks bad about professional fishing, then what do? They demonize who's speaking ill about their idol. Right. So, what's happened is I'm like, guys, Eric, it would be ignorant to go fishing and not get information, whether in your circles. And that's the thing. I never called anybody a cheater. I just said, there's always everyone gets information. If you Google something online, if you Google fishing report, lake, whatever, is that getting information? Yeah. Everybody's getting information. So this is just another form of information. And so when I had made the video saying, hey, everybody gets information, pros get information, everyone gets information, there was a lot of kickback like, oh, this dude obviously doesn't know any professional fishermen, or this dude. And I'm like, no, what you guys are hearing is me calling people cheaters. I've never called anyone a cheater. I just simply said, there is information exchanged at every level of fishing. This is just a platform for guides and highly dialed-in anglers to be able to monetize their information because they're constantly getting beat up by people. And, and so many people were saying like, oh, well, people can go figure it out themselves. And I'm like, I respect that. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but some people don't have the time to go figure it out themselves. Like I have a little boy, who loves catching bass. He's 2. Like, dude, if we go out on vacation, if I'm like, hold on, son, we're going to idle for 5 hours to find these juice holes, he's going to hate me. He's going to be like, Dad, I want to fish, And there's a world where recreationally I can say, hey, you were on the water last week. I've got my own boat. Give me a tip to head in the right direction, and I can expand on that, But, it's definitely, it's polarizing. It's so interesting to me because we did we sent out a survey to 500 people, and 90% of them said that being a fishing guide was a dream job. Would you say being a fishing guide is a dream job?
Yeah, that'd be sick. So it takes a lot of work.
No. Do you know part of being a fishing guide is selling information? Every time you take someone to a secret spot or take someone through a secret lure, technically you're monetizing or selling your information. So it's funny to me that 90% of people want to be fishing guides, but some of these people have had a problem with the idea of selling information. I'm like, what do you think being a guide is?
There's a lot of funny people in the fishing industry, and I'm sure you get a lot of flack from people that just hate the fact that you're giving out information or selling information too, because I've I've met a lot of people in the industry, and I understand that like some of these people would rather die than give away their secret spots or their secret lures. Like they're taking that to the grave. So like for you
Yeah.
to be able
But they take, they take they take
Blur out
pictures
the background.
or they're taking YouTube videos. I'm just like, it's a serious double standard. And, I mean, it's just, honestly, I just find it comical because I'm like, listen, Eric, this is how I feel about it. I don't need to be doing this, bro.
No.
Listen, I've got a great rental portfolio, got a great guide business. My family loves me. I've got friends that love me. Like, I genuinely am doing this because I want to help fishing guides make a little extra money and also help recreational anglers who can't necessarily afford a guide trip or don't have time or whatever to be able to make memories on the water. That's where this whole thing intersects at guides making money and people making memories. That's where, like I said, man, like I've been extremely successful. I'm very thankful for that. And, these guys who are like, I want to be secretive. Dude, if these guys want to get on the Elite Series, guess what? They put a Marshall with a tracking device to your boat. I don't know what to tell you. If you desire that to be on TV, there's going to be people videoing you and you're going to have follow boats. Like there's this whole idea that it's so secretive, but it's 2023, man. We live in the information age. There's no real secrets that exist.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And for fish tips, real quick, is it the people that are using the app? So you got the guide side where you do the verification that I kind of looked into a little bit, and then the actual user side where people buy the tips. Who is that really made for? Is it made for like pros, newbies, other guides? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So when I think about people who are sellers on the platform, I think about guides, maybe highly dialed in local anglers. Maybe maybe there's a guide who just lives on his home lake that he only fishes once every month, but he's been there for 20 years and he's like, hey, he wants to make a little extra money to take his family on vacation. So we've got local experts, full-time guides, part-time guides, tournament anglers. I mean, we've seen, I'm really good friends with Ben Milliken. Ben's made some posts after tournaments about, hey, this is how I call them, this is what I did and whatnot. So, really anybody who desires to make a little extra passive income or as close to passive as possible income, that's who we've created as sellers on the platform. Or like I said, man, guides who are like, or even these tournament anglers that are like struggling. They're like, oh my goodness, it's so hard, it's so expensive. It's like, well, hey, dude, what if you made an extra $250 a week? Dude, over the course of 52 weeks, that's $30,000. $30,000 selling fishing tips. Oh no, I'm sorry, $15,000. My bad. I'm trying to think. If you sold $100 tip for 52 weeks, that'd be $5,200. So $200 would be 10 grand, and $300 would be 15. I mean, you get it.
yeah, I'm not a big math guy, but I think it all adds up to make passive income.
Obviously, I'm not either. But either way, like, dude, who couldn't use an extra 10 grand?
Yeah, it'd be sweet, especially when you're doing tournaments and all that. Yeah.
Of course, dude. I mean, it's so expensive and everything. So then on the buyer side of the platform, it's guys going on vacation. It's like the other day we're totally booked up. I had a guy renting an Airbnb that had a pontoon boat that came with the Airbnb. He's like, hey, I don't want a guide trip, just what's working. I've got my own boat, and I'm like, hey, $50. And I told him, shaky heads, wacky rigs, and a drop shot. You look for these laydowns in this area of the lake. He freaking went out and smashed them. So, I'm thinking about fathers and sons, buddies, guys vacationing. I mean, the other thing is there are tournament guys that are like traveling, and I don't like look down on them at all, because once again, what'll happen is some high profile fisherman might go into a tackle store and just kind of listen to what the locals are talking about. And is that getting information?
Right.
I think that is, and not even if they add, like, you can't solicit. So I can't ask you, hey, Eric, what are the fish doing in Pennsylvania? But if you and your buddy are having a conversation about the Delaware River, and I'm in the tackle shop, just kind of snooping around, whatever. But there are tournament guys, dude. If I was going to fish a tournament on Toledo Bend or Sam Rayburn, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I could side scan and do all these things, and like I could figure them out. I'm a guide. I know how to use my side scan. I know how to use my live scope. I've been doing it for a long time. But someone like my dad, dude, my dad would have no idea.
You got me thinking about my dad too. My dad would be lost.
Exactly. And like, dude, I mean, I know how to freaking side scan, triangulate, live scope. I mean, I understand all that stuff. But like my dad just is a bank beater. He just likes to beat up the bank. And if someone was able to, dad said, he's like, dude, I would like, he likes to go to Florida with some friends. He said, dude, I would pay, they go for 2 weeks and they usually fish like 6 or 7 different lakes. He's like, I would pay $150 to $200 for a tip on each of those lakes, then just do one guide trip while I'm down there on one lake that I'm only going to fish one time.
Mm-hmm.
And here, oh my goodness, this is such a good point. I totally forgot. How much money does a guide actually make? I want to talk about that. Okay, so I got my fuel expense. Every time I hook up my truck and boat, it's about $125 to $150 in fuel. Okay, then my labor. Let's say I want to be generous. I want to pay myself $40 an hour. If I'm out on the water for 5 hours, that's $200. Then I have my insurance, normal wear and tear, tackle, and all these things. I usually equate that to about $100 to $150 a trip. So if I charge $500 or $600 on a trip, how much money is left? I know we're not good.
Yeah, not good at math.
Yeah,
but not much.
What's left? About $125, $150.
Yes.
So when you look at like when guys are like, I can't believe you're selling, fishing information or whatever. I'm like, listen, I'm selling it for exactly what I'd be making on a guide trip regardless. I just can now eat breakfast with my son or, do something else and not have to spend the fuel, spend all these other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like it's the little stuff you don't think about with guiding, I'm sure. Like even you mentioned like the bald tires. Like, I got to get new tires on the trailer. You got to get 3 of them because I need a...
Five tires a year, dude. I change at least 2 hubs a year on all my trailers. I've got 3 boats.
No, it is kind of insane, the expenses. I like the way you think about it too, because you think of it from like a business aspect, not just like I'm just going to go fish and kind of guide and teach people how to fish.
So, and that I think is where we have had some pushback is when you think about this as a businessman, what I say, I genuinely feel like makes sense. The pushback are these guys who they think like fishermen, man. They're so stuck in, I catch a fish, and I'm like, listen, I love that too, but I kind of want to fish for a living. And if I'm going to fish for a living, I have to work backwards. It's going to take $100,000 a year. All right, well, how do I work backwards? If I'm going to personally make $100,000 a year, whatever the number is, dude, you've got to work backwards. And so many people, like I said, there's a Joe Rogan podcast with Yeonmi Park, and I've said this in a couple other podcasts. Do you know who she is? She's the North Korean defector.
Yeah, yep, yeah. I actually watched the clips of that online.
She's awesome, and she said they would starve us so I could never think of that. She would starve us so we can never think about freedom. And I'm like, that is the bass fishing industry. So many people are starving to make it, but they don't understand. They're so worried about figuring out how to try to catch a fish. I'm like, you need to be thinking about how to make money. If you want to fish for a living, you can't just fish for a living, bro. You have to figure out how to make money to allow you to fish for a living. So there's a lot of people that when you talk about fish tips, they get their minds so stuck on this fish. It's like, no. Remove yourself. Because when you think about it as a guide, like after all my expenses and everything, I only make $150 to $200 a trip. That's what I charge for my tips on fishtips.com. So I'm making the same amount of money that I would. I just don't have my labor involved in it and all these other expenses, and once again, all these guys, they think about being a tournament pro. Man, kudos to you. Go get them, Tiger. It's extremely expensive. And if you're not watching every dollar bill, man, dude, that can put yourself in extremely scary financial straits. So I don't know. I think a little different, I think, than most people. And, I get a lot of hate because of it. I I don't think anything I say is like crazy off the wall. It's just, I just try to logically think about things like, is this good for my spirit? Is it good for my family? Is it good for our finances? Is it good for those things? And if it checks those boxes, then I'm like, hey, then this makes sense. Let me, incorporate this into my life and my business and so forth. So,
Nah, I think it all makes sense. And I love the timing too of fish tips, because it's kind of in this age of like everyone is super interested in like passive income, whether it be drop shipping or affiliates or anything like that. So I think the passive income play is real interesting for you guys to kind of get this set up, get rolling, especially in this time and this kind of economic state that we're in.
how else, Eric, how else can a fisherman make passive income?
Right. It's like the classic like drop shipping videos that you see online. Oh, Amazon drop shipping, FBA lures or something like that. And like, come on.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like, well, I feel like what we've created is really unique. Like it's a legitimate way for guides and anglers that desire to make secondary income. Like this is the most passive revenue stream ever invented in the fishing industry outside of owning a big corporation.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, Austin, I appreciated having you with you. Let's wrap it up here. I always ask everyone what your PB largemouth and PB smallmouth is.
PB largemouth. So this one, I got a lot of flack for this. I caught a giant bag of fish on a Huddleston one day. They had just stocked trout at a local lake. So I want to take my wife. She can't throw a bait cast or anything. So I'm like, well, she don't know how to retrieve baits, whatever. I put a live trout on the end of a rod, and dude, we caught a 12.5 pounder. And of course, I'm like known as the swim baiter, and catching a giant bass on a live bait and being a swim baiter, that's like the cardinal sin, right? So anyways, but I did catch the next year. I caught an 11.5 on a jig on a bed. But I've got I've never actually caught a double-digit fish on a swim bait.
Really? But you caught that 9.
I've caught 24 fish between 9.00 and 9.14. It's unbelievable. Like, it's crazy, but it's not that big of a deal. But biggest smallmouth was, I think it was right under 7 pounds. I got that on the YouTube channel. It ate a top water during the herring falling, feet away from the boat. There was 2. I was like, look at these big smallmouth fall on my top water. They were 4 pounders, big fat ones, and they peeled off it. I'm like, oh gosh, look at the size of this largemouth. And it came up and ate, and when it turned, I went, oh my gosh, that's a smallmouth, dude. It was like that wide. It was so dark, and it jumped and just started going crazy. It was like almost 20. Our smallmouth are weird. You think about like the Northeast, you guys have like these short, stocky smallmouth. We have these herring chasing smallmouth. So it was almost 24 inches long.
Jesus. For smallmouth?
Wow. It was like, yeah, I want to say it was like 23. It was like 23.5 inches, but like the tail was like worn down. And it was just that thick, dude. It was long. The fish was only from top to bottom. Like you guys have those smallmouth that look like,
yeah, they got the big shoulders.
Yeah, our smallmouth look like they're anorexic because all they do is swim and chase shad all day. They don't like lay on the bottom and eat goby and get fat, So, but it was an unbelievably long fish and it was really thick. But those were the 2. Big largemouth, big smallmouth.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give you a little time here at the end to plug Fish Tips, the website there, and then also your guiding service too, and any social medias too that you want to kind of shout out there.
Yeah, my guide business is Dreamcatcher Guides. You can go to dreamcatcherguides.com, and then our tackle shop is Dreamcatchers Fishing Supply, and it's dreamcatchersfishing.com. Our YouTube channel, Dreamcatchers Fishing, and then Fish Tips is pretty simple. It's Fish Tips pretty much on every social media platform and website. So fishtips.com. If you're a guide or highly touted angler looking to make money in the fishing industry, check out Fish Tips. It's a great product. We are constantly working on it and making it it is very trustworthy. We've sold, I think we've had like 5 or 6 little sales just come in while I've been on this podcast with guys that are selling tips to people who are looking to maximize their time on the water. So if you're a recreational fisherman, you're going fishing on vacation, maybe you just need a kickstart in the right direction. You're going to fish a tournament somewhere, whatever it is. We built this for recreational anglers, but we understand there's people that they need help on the water. And we just want to see people maximize their life. So that's what we're all about. But anyways, Eric, I appreciate this, man. This has been great. And I hope I wasn't too long-winded.
Nope, you're good, man. It's cool to kind of dive into your story, too. I wish you the best of luck with your guiding service and fish tips as well, man. You just listened to the Fishing Fanatics podcast with your host, Eric Stewart. Feel free to check out our other podcasts and our other interviews on our channel on Spotify, YouTube, and much more. Check out our Instagram page, TikTok, and Facebook as well.